So hi guys, hope you got some React information from my previous videos. And today I have picked the topic React Lifecycle Methods. And I'm going to break this video in two parts. And this is a very important topic. So please watch the whole video as React is based on different lifecycle methods that I'm going to discuss today with some use cases. And I will also try to show you in code in which order each and every lifecycle component is called. So let's start with the topic. So React Lifecycle has four phases. First one is initialization, second mounting, third phase is updation, and the fourth one is unmount phase. So in initialization phase, we set the props and initial states of the component in the constructor. And then comes the mounting phase where we use component will mount, render, and component did mount lifecycle methods. Then inside the updation phase, we use component will receive props, set state, should component update, component will update, render, and component did update methods. Then the last phase, we use component will unmount lifecycle method. So in this video, I'm going to talk about initialization phase and the mounting phase. And the second video, I'm going to discuss later about updation and unmount phase. So first is initialization phase. So this is the phase in which the component is going to start its journey by setting up the state and the props. This is usually done inside the constructor method. So if I show you inside the code, so I have some code with me. So I just paste it here. So you can see that this is a class component, and in this class component, we are defining a constructor where we are setting up the states and props. So you can see that we are using this dot state to initialize the state of status, data, and count, and we are using super. So super is basically called the parent constructor of parent class. So here the parent class is react.component. So this is how we use the initialization phase to initialize the props and states inside the constructor. Now we go back to the second phase, that is mounting. So inside mounting, so the first lifecycle method is component will mount method. So at this point, props and initial states are defined. So this method is only called one time, which is before the initial render. So basically this method is called before the component is mounted on the DOM. So inside this method, our component will not have the access to the DOM because the render method is still not called, and the component will mount is calling before this. So we have the access for props and state, but we don't have any access for the DOM. And now I'm going to discuss about the use case of component will mount. So the component will mount is a chance for us to handle configuration and update our state, and in general prepare for the first render. So at this point, props and initial states are defined, and we can safely query this dot props and this dot state. So this means we can start performing calculation and processes based upon the props value. And if I talk about other use case of the component will mount, so when the component needs to respond to global native UI events such as window resizing or focus changes, so this is a good place to do it. But here is important information about this lifecycle method. So this lifecycle method is used in the older version of React, but starting with React version 16.3.0, so new version of these method categorized as unsafe, and the legacy version will come with deprecation warning when in the strict mode. So, and also from the React version 17, the legacy version will be removed completely. So if we are using this method in React version 16 point greater than 16, so we have to use whatever inside this method inside the component did mount method. So this is important. So we have to stop using this method after version 16.3. Now, if I show you in code that how we can define this component will mount method, so I will again paste some code here. So here you can see that after the initialization process, I have defined the component will mount method where I'm getting this dot props dot data. So this is a child component. And if you don't know about states and props, so then you can watch my previous video. So I have explained it, what is states and props there. So basically when I pass the props to the child component, so I have the access of this dot props dot data inside the component will mount, and according to that this dot props dot data, I am setting a variable data status to success, and then I am updating a state that I initialize with the empty string. So now I'm updating it with this new data status value. So you can see that that's why I've told you that you can handle the configuration here, because you can just access the props and then define some variable or change some states. So this is the component will mount method. So then we come back to this mounting phase, and the other method is render method. So as I have talked earlier, so render is the most used method for any React powered component, which returns a JSX with backend data. So when the component file is called, it calls the render method by default, because that component needs to display the HTML markup, or we can say JSX syntax. So render method always return something. So if you don't want to return anything, you have to return null at least. So in the render method, you have to return JSX or null, and you can define some variable and perform some operation inside the render function. But remember one thing, never use the set state function inside, or avoid using set state function inside the render, because whenever state is updated, it will again call the render function, and application will go for infinity, and application gets crash. So inside the code, if I talk about how we can declare a render method, so just a second. So I'm going to again paste the code here. Yeah, so you can see that this is the render method and it's returning a JSX. So this is a JSX syntax, as I already told you in previous video also. And for now, I'm going to comment this. So basically this is calling a child component and I'm passing the prop. So as I told you that we can define some variable here also. So if you want to define some variable, you can define it like that. Sorry, so you can define it like this. So you can see that I can define some, so whatever variable I want to define, I can define inside the render method, but I will not define the set state. So set state is like, so I will not use this set state method and set the state. So I will avoid using it. So this is the render method. So if I go to the application and try to see that what's happening inside the application. So it's saying handle click is undefined. So here in the render method, I have created a button called on click. So for this on click handler, I'm going to copy one function handle click and going to paste it here. So this is just I'm handling something. So what this handle click is doing, whenever I click the button, it will just set the state to count. So this count will increase by 1. So now, yeah, it's render. So this is the render method. So this is how the React component render the JSX, and this is very important method because every component needs to render something. So whenever it needs to display something to the browser or display the HTML, then it has to use this render method inside the class component. Now I'm going to talk about the other component, that is ComponentDidMount. So this is the last lifecycle method of mounting phase. So what is ComponentDidMount? So now your component has been mounted and ready. So that's when the next React lifecycle method ComponentDidMount comes in play. So ComponentDidMount is called as soon as the component is mounted and ready. And unlike the render method here, we can allow the use of set state. So if you want to update any state, so we can use it here. But we need to be cautious while setting the state, since it could lead to performance issues. So the best practice is to ensure that your states are initialized under constructor. But the reason React allowed to use the set state here, because in some special cases like tooltips, model and similar concept, when you would need to measure a DOM node before rendering something, that depends on its position. So here I'm talking about DOM node again and again. So let me explain what is DOM node. So it's simply an HTML element. The DOM is a tree structure that represents the HTML of the website, and every HTML element is a node. So if I show you one, yeah. So this is the representation of a DOM node. So here you can see there is document, HTML head, body, title. So every element, HTML element is a node here, and it is represented as a tree structure. So that is called the DOM node. So coming back to our lifecycle method, now I'm going to talk about the use case. So the use case of this is a good place to initiate API calls. So if you need to load data from a remote endpoint, So this is the place, and we can fetch any data from an API. That API call should be placed in this lifecycle method, and then we get the response. And we can call the set state method and render the element with the updated data. What does this mean? That we can just call any, if we want to use, API, Axios and fetch, we can just use it here. But inside the code, I'm going to just use a dummy code here. So I'm going to show you that how component did mount, we can call a component did mount. So this is, I'm going to copy the code from somewhere and paste it here. So let me paste the code. So you can see that this is the component did mount method, and here what I'm doing, I'm calling this dot get data, and inside the get data function, what I'm doing, I'm using set timeout. So here what you can do, remove this and use the Axios or fetch API, and then fetch the data, and then inside the response you can set the state. But I will show you in the next video that how we can call the APIs. But here I'm just doing it like this only. So here I'm just setting the state of the data to 1 inside the set timeout. So this is the component did mount. And use case, I already told you that if you want to call the APIs, you can call it inside this component. And also you can use async in this component. So you can use async, and then you, while calling the API, you can use await like this. So I will tell you about this in later videos. For that, please subscribe to my channel, because there are lots of JavaScript concept, React Node, all things are coming in upcoming videos. So now I've defined the component did mount, and this component, as I told, that calls once after the component is rendered and mounted on the DOM. So now what I'm going to show you, inside the console log, I'm going to console log the render method like this. So I'm going to write console.render, and then I'm going to use console.didMount call. So you can see that as the set timeout is there, so first the didMount method is called, then the set time method is called, and then the render method is called. And before all of this, the render is called. So what I'm trying to show you here, the didMount method called only once. And if we change the state, so here you can see that I'm clicking on this button. After clicking on, the state is changed and the count is increased. So whenever the state is changed, the render method is calling again and again. So let me click on this button. You can see the render count is increasing. So this 10, 11 you can see, but didMount is not calling again and again. So didMount calls once, and the render method will call again and again if there is state is changed. So that's what I want to show you here. Now finally what I'm going to show you, that I'm going to show, so I'm going to just uncomment this. I will show you that how each and every component is calling in particular order. So that this is the prop that I'm talking about for the will mount. So what I have done here, I have passed the props data, and then in the will mount I am using this dot props dot data. So if I go here, okay, some error is coming. So what is the error? It's saying that, just a second. So yeah, I have not saved the file properly, that's why error is coming. So finally, so this is my output. So what's happening here? So first of all, I want to show you something that, yeah, so I have inside this test child component, I have mentioned each and every lifecycle method that we have discussed yet. So the component will mount, component did mount, and render method. So if in the console log, you can see that first will mount is called, then render method called, and then the did mount method is called. So it is particularly in this order only. So this is the lifecycle method, and it's saying status value 1. So this is coming from the JSX. So inside the test component, I am printing status value and using this dot state of status, and state is 1 initially, so it's printing 1. And then I'm passing a props here data, and using that props to just setting the variable here data status success. So and then I'm using status and this dot state data status. So this is success is coming like this only. So this is how the lifecycle methods is called. And one more thing I want to show you, that I have talked about, that if I set the state inside the render, what will happen? So let's say if I set the state count to 5 inside render method, so it will give error like this, that maximum update depth exceeded. This can happen when a component repeatedly calls set state. So that's why I'm saying that avoid set state here. So this is the lifecycle method, and in the second video I'm going to talk about updation and the mounting phase. So guys, this is my video about today's topic, and in next video, that is part 2 of the video, I am going to talk about other lifecycle methods too. So please subscribe to this channel, and I'm going to upload more and more videos in coming days. So, and remember, if you want to do it, you can do it. So till then, keep learning. Thank you.